First of all, I'd like to say thank you for being here. Last week, we had a hate crime incident at one of our schools, Robert Sanders. A racial slur was written on a poster. As an educator in this community for more than 30 years, it is painful and heartbreaking to see hatred in our community. And sadly, this is not the first time that this has happened. Last year, we had 2 other similar incidents on other campuses. Racial slurs, one directed at an African American teacher. We have worked very closely with the NAACP and the San Jose Police Department. This morning, I want you to know that we all stand here, our council people, the NAACP, my administrative team, to say that we do not tolerate bigotry in our community. This is a community that we have been in, all of us, and have been raised in. And we are seeking that this will never happen again. As a district, hate is a dividing incident, and we do not want this to take root in our community. Instead, we stand here united, working together, because stronger we are better, because we are a diverse community. During this past school year, we've tried to learn lessons. We have instituted a new curriculum with teachingtolerance.org, dealing with the issues of social justice, and you see our anchor standards right over here. We've also had Edwin Javis, who's been working with us on equity issues and inclusion. Our teachers have received and will continue to receive professional development from experts in social justice and equity education. We are bringing important discussions about inclusion into our classrooms so that our students from TK to grade 8 can have meaningful discussions. Lastly, I would like to say again, we value our partnership with the San Jose Police Department. We work collaboratively for them to investigate each of these incidents, and they have been reported to San Jose Police Department, and there are case files on all of them. The one thing that we are doing effectively that will improve is that we are having a new video surveillance system put in all of our campuses so that we have up-to-date surveillance. In closing, I would like to say that these hateful actions are not going to intimidate us or set us back. We are letting you know that it will not divide us as a community. We stand together against hate, against any racial slur. And I would like to thank the NAACP of San Jose and Silicon Valley, San Jose PD, Magdalena, right here, and Councilwoman Heinous, who will be here and will speak to us as well. So it is my distinct honor now to introduce the Reverend Moore.
We've been working here with the school district, and we're proud of the work and accomplishments that we have made and will continue to make. Even though there's still more to do, we acknowledge that. There's more to do as we go through this Super Tuesday across the voting ballots to look at what happened today, to understand we must vote and we must participate to change the course of this nation and not allow hate or bigotry to set foot into any of our communities. It is so vital that we address it today. Now, these young men or whoever these people were that wrote these remarks on the paper, on the billboard, we need to teach them. And I'm glad to know that we have to get teaching cultural history, cultural sensitivity history teaching in our classes. And to my Latino brothers and sisters, because our community is Latino, Asian, Black, white, I always want to look at the commonalities that we have. we must begin to teach Latino history. And that Latino history will begin with Vincent Guerrero, who was the second president of Mexico, who was of African and Latino descent. We have more in common when we learn to work to common and look for our common backgrounds, to understand each other and to love and respect each other. Then we can move forward. So again, we just want to, I want to also, my two distinguished council women who are here, let them know that back in June, I think June or July, I did approach the city council about developing a hate crime task force. And I say ever so often, even so more importantly now, we must develop this task force, not to condemn or to come down, but to teach and to exchange experiences and ideas and how we can better make our school and community a safer place. Again, thank you for coming and having me today. Thank you.
I really am here to stand together with all of you, to stand together with our community. It is unfortunate that we still continue to have this, but it is not a surprise. We've seen this kind of trend happening ever so slightly 4 years ago. And the rhetoric can't change, the rhetoric hasn't changed, and we can't continue to be accepting of some of the racial slurs and some of the racist comments that we hear now as often as we do in the news. And unfortunately now we're part of another incident that's reporting hatred and racism. And so for me, really, it's about taking responsibility as parents and as members of our community in terms of how we speak in our own households. Making sure that when we talk about politics, it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're in, but when we talk about politics in front of our children, and sometimes we don't notice that our children are listening, but they're listening and they're paying some attention. And they don't quite understand some of the nuances of our language, some of the nuances of our statements, and unfortunately they kind of run with it, right? Without us having an additional conversation with them directly. And so I'm really glad to see that Superintendent of our district here has anchor standards and domains, because really our schools and our district is the anchor for our community. They are the ones that hold our children, that teach our children, and that allow for our children to thrive. And so thank you for making sure that we have these anchor standards. And lastly, really, I just wanted to share my own experience in this. 4 years ago when I was campaigning, my son was campaigning with me and got to hear a lot of the Trump rhetoric, if you will. And at that time, he was only in second grade. And one of his fellow students in his classroom told him that he should return to Mexico. Otherwise, he would be arrested. Now, my son was very confused. He wasn't sure what that meant. And so we talked about it. He knew Trump was running, and he knew some of the statements that Trump had made about the Mexican community. But I sat down with him and we really talked about what that meant. And so that's important for us as parents to do. Unfortunately, at that time, my son realized the differences between the students versus some of the commonalities that our Reverend Moore was talking about. And really, we need to focus on what brings us all together. And for us, it's really love. Love of our community, love of one another, and making sure that we all focus on a very positive message. And so thank you so much for your leadership in bringing us around the corner and making such a tragic incident into something and a learning opportunity. So thank you all.
I think that this is such an important issue that needs to be discussed and not hidden away in shame because we need to bring it to the light. We live in one of the most diverse cities in the entire country. I'm proud to call it my home. I'm proud to represent a district that borders District 8, so collectively between Councilmember Arenas and myself and Councilmember Maya Esparza, which is District 7, we have the 3 most diverse districts in the city of San Jose. Whether you're Vietnamese, Cambodian, Filipino, East Asian, Latino, and that could be Mexican, Nicaraguense, Colombiano, you name it, we live here. And collectively, we have all contributed to what is the magnificence of this city and what is now one of the powerhouses of California. And so we all understand and we know, I think we've all really have ingrained the intellectual understanding that the immigrant has made this country the strength that it is, but especially California, the fifth powerhouse in the world. But to be able to teach our children that and to also really drive home that this kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated in one of the most diverse cities. But I also want to just point out something that Reverend Moore said that really, I think, it needs to be repeated, especially on this day, because it is Super Tuesday. And today makes all the difference in the world. And I don't think that the press conference today is an accident or a coincidence. But today is the day that makes the difference with your vote. And so it is not a coincidence, though, as well, that 4 years ago, we started to see a rise in hate crimes. We started to see that. We know that there's racism in our communities. We've all experienced it to some extent. I felt it as a person of color, as a woman, and as a daughter of immigrants. We've all grown up with it to some extent. But we began to see a rise in hate crimes in the county of Santa Clara throughout, by the way. And we've only seen it get worse. When you have the person, the most powerful individual in the White House, making comments about the other, whether that is the person of color, a member of the LGBTQ community, or those who are not as able-bodied as the rest of the world, then it gives permission, it opens the door for racism to bubble up to the surface and to be bold. In other words, we've emboldened those individuals who were already feeling what they were feeling. So some of it we can teach it out, and some of it we know we never will be able to. But to be able to live in harmony is at the end of the day our ultimate goal. So I want to thank the leadership for having taken such bold steps in making sure that our children are anchored to those guidelines by your wonderful administration and your teachers. We need to live in harmony. We need to understand each other's values and principles, but more than anything, we need to understand that we all contribute to what is the greatness of America and to what is the greatness of California and to what is the greatness of San Jose. So thank you so much for having us here. Get out and vote.